Does it tell us when he's? Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. Miss Elaine, did you get a roll call and make sure everybody can hear us?
Yes, I have everyone accounted for except for Mr. Peridot.
Okay, we still don't have Mr. Peridot?
I've not seen him pop up.
That's neither.
His name's on the list.
Do what?
His name's on the list, people in the call.
Oh, I didn't see his name.
I see, yeah, he's in the list, yeah.
Okay.
He's muted right now.
Okay. Okay. He may not know.
I don't know if he can hear me, I can send Justin over to his house, so when he stands at the door and tell him.
I will count him.
Okay.
Hang on, I just sent him a message. He's messaging me. He can hear, but he's not coming through.
His mic is muted. I don't know, if he's on the phone, tell him that he can touch the picture.
He can hear you. You're talking to him.
Okay. You can touch the picture if you're on your phone at the top, and it'll give you an end call, and then there's a mute button. You can push the mute button and unmute it.
Gordy's on there, but he can't. Can you go see if you can unmute Gordy? You can? Mm.
Gordy, if you can hear, if you're on your phone, actually, you might ask him if he's on his phone. If it just touches the picture at the top.
Are you calling me?
First button on the left.
Gordy's left the meeting. These are probably going to try to call back in.
Okay. He's left. So we're going to give him a second to see if he can log back in. This is driving me nuts. Why echoing so bad?
Ashley, be sure to stop that Kentucky OSG that's at the top of the agenda. KSC, that we cite that in the opening of our meeting.
That's agreed.
What's she saying? Because I can't hear anything she's saying. None of that's coming through.
So can you mute yours? Can you mute yours all the way down? Turn your sound down. Let me turn my sound down. Speaker issue.
The quality of the sound is not so bad.
Somebody's mic got too loud. You turn your volume down on your speaker.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I did. Did Ashley understand what I said about citing that, OAG reg regarding the meeting?
I'll tell her when she comes back.
Okay.
How about now?
There you go.
All right,
Good now.
okay.
Yes. Oh, turn yours down for a minute. Oh, no, leave it up. Brian is gonna read that, Arlene, but I can't hear hardly anything you're saying.
You should be able to now, probably.
I just unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Turn yours back down, Greg, and I'll turn mine back up. Well, his did the same thing. Arlene, can you say something?
Yes, what you need?
Is anybody else having trouble hearing Arlene?
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing anybody.
They're having a hard time hearing everybody.
It's a really bad echo.
It went away.
I think that probably what's gonna have to happen is everybody has to mute and just whoever's talking. And if you have something to say, then unmute.
Would it
Yeah,
be better
the
if
call
we called in
really
on the
good.
conference? Would it be better if we called in on a conference bridge and just use this video?
What did he say?
Everybody perfectly and see everything on my cell phone. I'm seeing everything perfect.
I can hear everybody okay, but I'm unmuting when I'm not talking. Turn off my-
That's fancy.
I know. How do I do that? Click on here. What do I click? Yeah.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, if you and, Ashley are in the same room, you're gonna get this bad echoing.
Well, we shut her down, okay, and she has on my computer.
It's,
Who has a device, Mr. Thomas.
yeah, if there is more than one person in a room that has, this meeting going, it's gonna reverb and it's gonna echo. I'm getting real bad echoing in the boardroom.
Okay, well, Brian's off now. I don't know, somebody say something. I can't understand.
Sounding all right. And I think when Greg starts is when it starts to echo. He may need to go back to his office.
We've got one computer here, computer going. It's me, I mean, it's one group. Yeah, Brian's not on, mine's logged off, we're all logged off. But like, when Arlene tries to, we can't hear it.
Was that on your agenda, that Kentucky OAG ruling there at the top? You need to read that once you open the meeting up.
We got Brian's gonna read it.
Okay.
I guess we're on recess. Yes, it is.
Oh,
6:42.
okay, I'm sorry.
Justin's left and they was still good.
Whatever to do, it sounds okay now.
I, I don't know what we need to, what, I mean, we've done mine. Is it in this room? I guess.
Yeah, there seems to be more than one person in that room that is actually still on. I'm not sure where it's coming from. But,
Yeah, does it show me going?
I'm just seeing Greg Holland.
Greg is, I'm on Greg. He would be logged on. I'm using his computer. Mine should be logged out of mine.
Try to take that computer to another room, actually.
Here, you. I don't know how you do. Well, no.
Mine, mate.
Well, you can call in and do the phone, okay? If that's the audio issue, not the video. If you call in the phone, if you dial the conference bridge on the phone, you can still do the audio, over your phone, just use the video.
Isn't Brian and Ashley both in the same room? Or aren't Brian and Ashley in the same room?
time, we are at a moment of silence. So if you all would please stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. And the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and at this point, I'm going to.
The COVID-19, the Kentucky Attorney General, in its opinion dated 20-05 that was issued on March 18, 2020, said an agency should consider memorializing in its minutes the reasons it is not feasible to meet in a physical location. In this particular case, it is due to the COVID-19 and the declared state of emergency, given the social distancing guidelines by the CDC as well as the requirements by the governor. We are doing this telephonically and through a Google Meet program so that we can record the meeting as well as provide an opportunity for all the board members to be heard and to be seen. So with that, I will turn it back over to Ms. Ritchie.
Okay, item number 1, review of the agenda. I did ask Mr. Christie to just, with these current situations, put what we needed to, keep the district going at this, not put a whole lot on there that needs, or that the public may want to come in for. So with that being said, is there anything that anybody wants to add or take off of the agenda?
I'd have something, if you can hear me, I have something I'd like to add. It's an item to consider approval of an addendum to our certified evaluation plan. It's just one minor change but the policy doesn't address it because of the situation we're in. We need to make a change. It would be for this year only.
Did everyone hear that?
Yes.
Yes.
I think I saw it.
Hey, Ashley,
Yeah.
can you see if your phone's still on? And turn it,
We hung it up.
there's somebody with the last digit 40 that's like causing ruckus. It's 859, last 2 digits 40.
I see that on there. I don't know who that is.
What's the number?
It might
Last-
be you, Sherry, actually.
Yeah, 5540.
Okay, can you mute?
I can hear it.
He needs you to mute in between unless you got a question because he can't hear you.
There we go.
Okay. You unmuted again, Sherry.
How do I?
There you go. Oh. Where is that? Yeah, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
What item number will that be?
9A. As amended, please.
I'll make that motion. Scott?
Heisel. I'll second. All those in favor? We'll have to do a roll call vote, guys. There's a motion by Heisel, right? Okay. We'll start out with District 1.
Yay.
District 2.
Yay.
District 3.
Yay.
District 4. Sherry, unmute.
Yes.
Okay, you gotta mute back. And District 5 is at. Sorry. Item number 3, approval of minutes for March 11, 2020 work session, March 12, 2020 emergency meeting, March 16, 2020 regular meeting. Scott, you're unmuted too, by the way. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt as written.
Was that you, Bill?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Tolby. I'll second. Roll call vote, all, District 1,
Yay.
District 2,
Okay,
District 3,
Yes.
District 4. Carried. District 4. She texted me, yeah, does that count? You gotta say it, it don't count, oh, I think we've lost her.
She sent me a text, she aborted.
Okay, so what do we put her down? Okay, District 5 is, yay, so passes,
4-1, with Ms. Richardson.
not present. Motion passes 4-0. Or would it be 5-0?
4-0.
4-0. With Miss Richardson MIA. Okay, public comments.
I had two,
You want to come over here and I'll do
no,
it?
I'm okay. I had two folks stop by. I stood outside until, that's why I was late joining in. I stood outside till past time. I had two folks dropped off letters, Miss Jeannie Gwynn and Miss Lori Settles, both asking the board to consider not canceling the graduation, but just merely postponing it at this time. I will run you all copies of those, and I will email those to you first thing in the morning. They're both advocating for for just considering to postpone it at this time, and I would be okay with that. I will tell you, we are looking at some ways to do something temporarily, do a virtual graduation or some things there. We're looking each day, there's more and more options comes up, so we're looking at that, and as we get further down the road, I'll report that back to you. And that's all the comments that I have.
All right, Miss Richardson is back in and she's trying to figure out how to unmute. She doesn't have a red button. Hit your screen.
Just touch the picture, it'll be a clear button with just a little microphone.
Are you on your phone, Sherry, using it?
Touch the picture and it'll
You know you're talking to someone that's muted, right?
He's texting me. Ha ha, Bill. She doesn't have a picture. She's called in.
She did download the app, that's right. Muted on a phone call.
Justin. She says she does not have a picture on her phone. Oh, Sherry, *6. Oh, she's texting me. You just say that. It's unmute on a phone. TriStar 6. There you
Okay,
are.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, so you get star 6 every time you go to vote, okay?
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, item number 4, consider selection and approval of audit firm. Oh, I'm sorry. Student and staff, we skipped over that completely, I'm so sorry. Student and staff recognition,
I just
Mr. Christie.
I just quickly wanted to, first off, you saw in the letter that I put up on our social media, how much I appreciate the work of our our teachers and all of our staff. I want to let you know that in the month of March, we served 10,820 meals. In April, we served 15,000. We're a total of 26,000 meals that we served the kids. So kudos to that group of people that's doing that. The other thing I wanted to mention is the Governor's Scholars Program. We had 9 students that were selected for the Governor's Scholars. Kendall Harrison, Maria Jackson, Catherine Kennedy, Sienna Lemon, Brenna Rose, Jackson Feeback, Logan Gamble, Zachary Gibson, and Chandler Rojas. That's 9 total. That's a huge number for Governor Scholar Program, so they should be commended, and we'll do some more for recognition for those folks too.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Item number 4, consider selection and approval of audit firm for auditing services. Ms. Ellis, is reading her.
You have the audit, copy of the audit, and the services that they. You have the complete package that we received on the bid day.
Does anybody have any questions?
It was just a call regarding school for the remainder of the school year. We won't be having anything in class.
Mr. Heisel is gone.
I'm right here.
Oh, okay. He wasn't showing up on here. Okay, no questions? No comments?
I've got comments, not questions.
Okay. For number 4?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll go.
Okay. Regarding the firm that has done it in the past, I think they've done an excellent job. I've always been impressed with the work that they've done, and any questions I've had, I think they've done an excellent job of. But they've done it for a long time. I'm not quite sure how long, perhaps over 10 years. And there's been some challenging issues in the last year, and I think it might be time to try another firm out. But I want to make sure I'm clear in stating that the idea to try another firm out is certainly not a negative reflection on the fine work that the current firm has done.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Sorry, you go to the bottom of the list, and it looks like you've logged off, Scott. Like right now, it's showing that Gordy's gone, but Mr. Talby's unmuted, I see. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just turning my microphone off.
How long have we used this phone?
I'm not sure. They were here. I've been here 15 years, and they were the firm that was here when I came here. So past, and I can ask Miss Ellis, if you're listening, you can unmute Miss Ellis and you can answer that one maybe.
Yes, sir. I actually looked up back when we started with this firm in prior audits, the actual paper documents, and we've actually had them for a 20-year run. I know in my tenure that I've been there, and Ms. Amos's tenure, they were the only ones who actually put a bid in. So this is the first time that we've had any audit firms put any bids in for quite some time, which is why they have been the audit firm for so many years.
Is there any insight to why they were the only bidder?
I do not know that. have sought out bids the last 2 times we've done it. In the prior year, it's been 3 years ago that we sought bids. No one put one in, but this time when I sought bids, we did have 2 additional people put bids in this time. So it's just, a lot of it has to do with workload of those firms and there's only certain firms that actually do school audits. And a lot of them have their set schools they work with, and they're not willing to add any other schools to their, what they're working on. So that's kind of probably a lot of the reasoning, is that all the firms are kind of set in the groups they work with in the areas.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Could I ask a follow-up question?
Go ahead.
Is the approval for auditing services on an annual basis, or would we have to do this on a 3-year contract?
The way the bid was written, it has to be 3 years because that's how we presented the bid. And that's just me copying what the bid has been since I've been in the district, but that most certainly can be rewritten next time it is bid, but that's currently how it was bid. Or I guess you could say request for proposal, not really bid.
What is your recommendation, Ms. Ellis?
I certainly understand the thought of going with a new firm, and the current auditor has done a fantastic job, and they have been extremely easy to work with, very knowledgeable in what they do, and actually very educational in helping me learn more about the audit process as well. And I'm sure if we went with the other firm that has put a bid in, it would be the same case. I've talked to many of the people who actually have that firm, and that has been kind of the consensus of they are very easy to work with as well. It's just they are farther away from us, and so therefore they'd have to travel. They don't know our district, so there's going to be a lot of forefront of getting them caught up on just learning what Clark County is and how our operations are, and they do cost more money, and it's going to be more time working with them, whereas our current auditors are very streamlined because they know Clark County and have worked with us for so long. And just everything we've dealt with in the last month has been a lot. And to add even more on top of that, even more so now, I would still recommend to stay with Summers, McCrary, and Sparks.
Mr. Thomas, are you on the line?
I'm on the line, just not on the, you can't see me, Scott.
Okay. So I guess what my question is, even this was a request for proposals, could we just do a 1-year renewal with the current accounting firm? Because Mrs. Ellis certainly makes a lot of very excellent points.
Their fees may change if they had thought it was only gonna be a 1 year, and I believe that's the way the bid proposal came out, so if we change it, we can do the whole process.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion or questions? If not, would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve item 4 written.
I can't approve it as written.
Alicia, you're still unmuted.
Oh, sorry. I gotta choose which firm.
I said I'll make a motion to approve item 4 written.
As written, okay. Yeah, who?
I'll second.
Hang on just a second. Are you choosing Summers McCrary?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second by Mr. Harvey and Ms. Richardson. So, roll call vote. District number 1.
Yay. Favor.
District number 2.
Yay.
District number 3.
Yes.
District number 4, I see Gordy.
Yes.
And district number 5 is yes. Motion carries 5-0. All right, item number 5, consider approval of the 2020-2021 final allocations to school councils.
There has been no changes to the allocation since it was presented to you the prior time. We have sent the letters out of non-renewal to everybody that was hired on as extras for last year because of the increased attendance. We're back to the exact number that's allocated in the proposal, in the allocation plan. So nothing's changed since you get first reading to it.
Any comments or discussion? I see.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Christie, with all the unknowns floating over things right now that have to do with the COVID-19 crisis, does that change any of your thoughts? What was previously allocated? Should we think about holding back anything, or do we have enough flexibility so we could change depending on that? If circumstances change substantially.
Well, we with or give non-renewals to all the extracurriculars, all those extra things. We cut all those back, everybody that we could, and we're down to we're meeting policies, the numbers we have. If your policy, and it's changed the policy if we allocate less than what the policy calls for. In other words, the number of students that they're proposed at, we would have to go outside of your policy to do anything any different. Any of the growth positions, we would not add anybody back until we get in and we start the first 5 days of next year, and we see based on attendance if it qualifies for more, then we would hire more. If a school is low and another school is short, then we at that time we have the right to transfer people from building to building to fill voids in other places that may need extra people, and we can do that. And we would look at that before we would hire on anybody else. So if a building came in and their attendance was up a little bit and another one's attendance had dropped some, instead of hiring an extra, then we could possibly move someone from the building that's shortened on students to the building that's got some extra students. So that's one way of that we've got a little bit of leeway in there for next year. But anything less than what's allocated in this is going to be below what your policy calls for.
How about, if I'm using the term correctly, Section 6 funds? Should we try to come in lower on that now? And just asking a question.
Well, I will tell you that on all the things that we're doing right now, I've cut off spending on anything. Only thing that we're looking at is possibly some summer type things that we could go ahead and start. All of the grant programs. I think I told you earlier, normally you have until September 30th to spend this year's money into September 30th of next year. They've already extended that deadline to, I'd have to check it. It's 30 or 60 days. They've already extended that. So we've stopped at the direction. I've talked to the Title I and some of the other program directors, and the only other than what is already allocated or whatever's already committed as far as a salary or something like that, that's the only thing we're spending. So we're holding that stuff back right now, and just starting to compile and work on our summer list. And there may be a chance at this opportunity from this, there's going to be some savings generated from fuel costs, fuel savings, energy savings, substitute teacher savings. So I'm starting a little bit earlier on the summer list that I'll be coming back to you with at the next meeting with the summer list.
Anybody else? If not, would anybody like to make a motion? Anybody at all?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All right, roll call vote. District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
I'm sorry, yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4.
yes,
Motion carries 5-0. Item number 6, consider approval of waiver of fourth 9-week midterms. Paul Christie, Greg Holland.
I'm out of order on the agenda here. You have a policy right now that calls for, a board policy that says that we'll give, students will receive a 4-week and a midterm grades. And we're asking for just to, on that policy, to, asking for a waiver on that because we've been out of school, and with the work coming in the way that it is on NTI, teachers are running, they're going to be running a little bit behind on logging work in, so we're not able to meet the 9-week deadline or the 9-week period of the midterms. So I would ask for a waiver on the 9-week midterms for this year and this year only. And if we need to do anything differently next year, we'll come back and talk about it, but just a waiver for that policy, particular policy on the 9-week grading period for the remainder of this year. This is something that's being done pretty much statewide.
So, if you can mute, can you mute?
You want me? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So my understanding is that, this may, we may have a shortened year. I know we haven't talked about that, and I'm not sure if we'll talk about that today or not. But with these midterms, I think I'm getting a lot of complaints, and I know it's a struggle, but, you know, we got some teachers that's not putting grades in. Parents don't know where their kids stand. And if, you know, if we do this, the teachers need to put the grades in. Because we're going to, if, you know, it's not just midterm, if we're going to shorten the school year too. We're only looking at maybe a few weeks. So that doesn't give kids a lot of time to, if they're missing something or something's not turned in, or, you know, if the assignment got misplaced, for them to catch that, and it could affect their grade. So I just ask that teachers do the best they can, and I know they are, to do best they can to update these grades as soon as possible, so that the parents know where their students stand.
I agree with that, and I think you're going to see this week, this coming week, you're going to start seeing more grades going in because the teachers were running the work was put out for 2-week intervals, and now that once we got it, we let that set for safety reasons and just kind of disinfected all of the work, the paperwork, and now the teachers are starting to actually grade those, score those, and starting to input those grades. So I think you'll start to see grades going in this week, a lot more than what they have been in the past. And we've had this discussion with the administrators, and I think this week you're going to start seeing, folks are going to start seeing a lot more grades going in.
Okay. I just want to make sure everyone understands. I think the teachers are doing an awesome job. I think this is just, you know, unprecedented times. I know parents are doing the best they can, especially, you know, poor old parents that's got multiple kids in different grades at different schools. Yeah. So, feel for them. But I do know that I've had some parents reach out to me, you know, wanting to know where their kids stand. So anything we could do to kind of push that a little bit would be appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, we're trying to do that. If you're able to hear me, I can't say holistically that this is the entire part of the issue, but some of it is the paper packet, as Mr. Christie had alluded to, versus the online learning platforms and that type of thing. So that in and of itself kind of lends to a little bit of a lag with that paper pencil, paper packet, if you will. And then with the online stuff, there is a little bit more real time. That's not to say that that's holistically the issue, but I know those two things create a little bit of a barrier in terms of their grading right now, but we'll catch that up.
Thank you.
anybody else have anything they wanted to? I lose my board. If not, would anybody like to
I
make?
agree with Bill. I think all of us parents to know where their children stand if we're gonna shorten the year.
One thing that we have talked to the principals with too, that if there are students that they're seeing that kind of a problem with, or a lack of grades, that those teachers are going to be a little more concerted effort to contact those students and to work to do that. So that's something else that should start seeing some more. And I think as we get closer now with today's announcement, and we're going to need to have some discussions at some point about the length of the school year, the recommendation is that you close once you hit the 1,062 hours. And so the conversation with the principals tomorrow is going to be that sometime in here before we do close, there needs to be a week or two without assignments so that folks can have a little extra time to kind of get caught up on some of these things. And if they've got questions and they start working on to get caught up on everything that's already out there without creating more work for the students to do at this point.
Mr. Christie, I have a question.
Go ahead.
The weighting that is allocated to the fourth semester, I guess that's what we're in the middle of right now. If there was a concept of changing that allocation so it's not 25% of your full year's grade, who would make that decision? Is that a site-based decision, or is that changing that allocation percentage even possible?
That's a site-based council decision on the weighting of those, weighting of the grades, the makeup of the grades, and the council's decision on all of that, and the grade and the grades as they're assigned. So that would be a council decision.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anybody else? If not, would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion as written.
I'll second.
Mr. Heisel, second by Ms. Richardson. Roll call vote. District number 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Item number 7. Consider approval of change in 2019-2020 graduation credit requirements. Mr. Christie.
On this, we're asking, KDE is looking closely at the number of credits required for graduation. They're asking to set that, and that the districts work with them on setting the credits, and the credits be the same across the state. Our requirement's 25. They're looking at probably setting it at probably, the last I heard, they were talking 22. My recommendation is just for the board to grant a waiver for the number of credits required to graduate from Clark County this year as a 1 year as a result of the COVID-19 for this year, that they, and defer that setting of that number of credits to Kentucky Department of Education for this year only.
Any questions, comments? Go ahead, Mr. Heisel.
So just to clarify, what Mr. Christie is proposing is that we change our policy to mirror whatever change KDE might change this to in the future, just for this year?
Yeah, just for this year.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
When is the meeting?
They're meeting almost daily as far as setting this, and I know today I found out at the end of the call with the governor and the commissioner, I've got another call on Thursday, and I think they're going to be addressing some more of this on Thursday. It looked like that the state board was pretty much aligned with at 22 credits. Where we're at 25, this could help some of our Phoenix kids also. We've got some kids that are over 17, but still under 18, but they're going to have to come back and go another year for 2 or 3 credits. And then when they hit 18 during the year, that's when we lose them as dropouts. I think this is going to be an opportunity to help those kids out too. So, but it's about 3 less than what we require. But again, it's just asking for a waiver for this year due to the circumstances that we're in. And it would be their whatever policy that they adopt, that we just follow it for this year only.
You need to mute, Bill.
Oh, is there any chance, there's not a chance they're gonna up that, is there?
You mean more than ours?
Yes.
No. If they do anything at all to it, it will stay the same or reduce.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? If not, would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make motion to approve as written.
Motion by Mr. Tolly. I'll second.
I think you better clarify that a little bit better.
Sherry, can you mute? Okay, Gordy, come back.
I think we need to clarify that a little bit as written, say that it will mirror the KDE recommendation.
Okay. Mr. Tolly.
I'm fine with that.
So consider approval of change 20 credit requirements per KDE requirement. Yeah, sorry. You wrote that down too. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Gordy. District number 1.
Yay.
District 2.
Yay.
District 3.
Yes.
4.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Item number 8, consider approval of proposed time extension, change orders to cited contractors for the Clark County George Rogers Park High School Fieldhouse and Athletics Project, BG 18-334.
My recommendation is to approve it as written.
I don't know if y'all heard that. His recommendation is to approve as written. Any questions, comments? If not, would anybody like to make a motion?
Move to approve as written.
Motion by Mr. Peridot.
I'll second.
No, Mr. Tolly beat you to it. Okay. District number 1.
Yay.
District 2.
Yay.
District 3.
Yes.
District 4.
Yay.
Motion passes 5-0. Gordy's disappeared to see his door. But here's his voice. Item number 9, consider approval of change order 18-12 with Fayette Electrical for the George Rogers Clark High School Gymnasium Athletic Field Project, BG 16-238, in the amount of $3,762.01.
This change order, my recommendation would be to approve it. It's already been done. It was one I gave approval on. It was a requirement from the state building inspector to ensure that the fire alarms were loud enough when you had a full crowd there. We tied the fire alarm system into the PA system, so the fire alarm would sound over the PA. Yet if somebody was talking on the PA, they would override the fire alarm and they could give directions. It was required of the state fire marshal to do this. We had to do the same thing at the football stadium. This was in the gym.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. When will this project for the gymnasium be closed? I mean, we still working on change orders, or is there still work being done in there?
There's work being done, they're punch listing out, and we've got a construction meeting this Thursday, and we'll get an update on how close they are to being finished there. I noticed the handrail, that's one thing that's still left to do outside. There's a little bit more landscaping. They're down to the final punch list things, but there is a construction meeting, I think at 9:30 or 10 o'clock on Thursday morning in the field house where we can have adequate spacing out there for a meeting. So they will meet over in the field house out by the baseball field at 10 o'clock. So there'll be a more of an update there, but it's down to the punch list things is all it is.
So just a follow-up on that. Looks like we have about $416,000 remaining in this project. When this close, say it's $400,000, where's that road over to?
It will stay as capital outlay, as capital funds money, and it can be used at a later time on other projects.
Okay.
Once we file the BG5, the BG5 is the last thing that happens. That's when they're through, everything's done, and we file the BG5, and that has the final closeout document with KDE, and then any monies that's left over in any of the categories then becomes capital funds for future projects.
Got it.
Would anybody like to make, or does anybody else have any questions, comments? If not, would anybody like to make a motion?
Make motion to approve as written.
Motion by Mr. Talby.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Richardson. District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. All right, item number 9A. Consider approval of addendum to 2019-2020 certified evaluation plan.
As all this is it's some changes in the legislature. They approved this, and because of the COVID-19, when we've done our evaluations, they've done those like we're doing this meeting. And there's a part of the policy in the certified evaluation plan that says that you have 3 days to sign the document, or 3 days to meet in person with the teacher or person being evaluated, and we've had to waive that. And all we're asking for is a waiver in that part of the evaluation plan, and they're now allowing us to have that meeting via email or via like we're doing here. So that's all. That's the only change. The only addendum to this is allowing for the evaluation meeting. That's all it is. We would ask for an addendum for this year and this year only.
Any questions or discussion?
Move to approve as presented.
Motion by Mr. Peardo.
I'll second that.
Second. District number 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 5-0. That's probably what I'm getting ready to ask you. That's what I'm. Oh, well, we should have added it. Here, let me turn to
Do your
Well, we're,
consent agenda first. Before you adjourn.
okay. All right, guys, items, was there anything anybody wanted to take off of items 10 through 25?
I just had a question about item number 12, but not necessarily take it off.
Go ahead.
Ms. Ellis, are you still on the call?
I'm here.
Okay. On item 12, in the third quarter finances, it looks like general revenues are running at 92% this year versus 96% last year. Do you think that's just a timing issue, or do you have any concerns that we won't be able to meet that target by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year?
Are you talking about property tax 92 versus the 96?
Yes, ma'am. General revenues.
Yes. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that because that's really based on collections from the sheriff's department, and that is what we have collected at this point. I think a lot of it has to do with the budget versus collections. I mean, you can see we've actually collected more because our tax rate is higher. And we budgeted a little bit different this year than we have budgeted in the years past. We budgeted a higher percentage of collection than we did in years past. So with Dr. Bob's help and OVEC and Miss Moore, the prior years we actually budgeted a lesser collection rate because they were doing like a rolling average of how we collected, and I think we only budgeted roughly 93% collection. And then looking at historically, we have surpassed that the last couple of years. We budgeted that percentage higher this year. So I think that's a lot of why at this point that percentage is looking different for the quarters compared to the prior 2 years, if that makes any sense.
It does. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anything else anybody needs pulled off? If not, would anybody like to make a motion? Sherry, you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Are you trying to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Richardson,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Talby. District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Item number 26, authorized payment of salaries and accounts payable.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Peridot,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Cole. District number 1,
Yes.
District number 2,
Yes.
District number 3,
Yes.
District number 4.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Before we adjourn, I think Mr. Christie needs to talk to everyone.
As based on the conversations today with the governor and the commissioner of education, KD is recommending that schools consider closing for students, ending the work for students when they reach the 1,062 hours. At our current schedule, and the days we have left to schedule, we would exceed the 1,062, I think, by May the 5th. So we need to at some point have a discussion on what your all's feelings on that is and how you want to do that. Obviously, it could be the last day of school for kids, but teachers and classified folks still have contract obligations. So we still have other things to do there with final grades, grading inputs, and report cards and all that, and then even can use some time to get a start on some PD and some work on some distance learning type things. But we need to make a decision on what we want to do with kids and how much longer we want to go with that. And I would like to do something. I think we're going to need to do something fairly soon. I think parents, kids, everybody in the community is ready for some sort of a decision to be made one way or the other, whatever that date is. So I can give some direction also to my principals and the teachers about how much more work to prepare if we're looking at that May the 5th when we exceed the 1,062. my recommendation to them is going to be stop any assignments at least a week, a little over a week prior to that date, so that the kids have got time to catch up and get their work completed that's already out there. We knew when we went into NTI, we'd never done it before. I'd never asked for it. I don't like NTI, but we were kind of forced into this one, and I knew when we did it, our teachers are overachievers, and they were going to send more work than probably what they would have done in the regular classroom. So I'm sure this has put a lot of stress on parents and kids. I've dealt with it talking to parents and talking to some students. So I'm asking that we do this and make a decision on this fairly quickly so I can put a deadline out there to my principals and teachers so that we can stop the work and give these kids some time to catch up and get the work that's already been assigned in so that we can get them credit for it. So you all tell me what your feelings on it is, or how you want to address it with another meeting, or what you want to do, or we can't really make a decision, but I just need kind of some direction if you don't mind.
Paul, from my standpoint, I'd definitely like to have a work session pretty soon for you to talk about everything that you're hearing every day. And I go back to the same concerns that Mr. Talby had a little while before. I mean, we're looking at May 5th, that's 2 weeks away. I mean, you may have some students that need to get it in gear just a little bit more and a little bit more time, unless we are going to try to do some type of summer catch-up work.
I'm in favor of doing a work session as soon as it can get scheduled. I'm in favor of that.
I am too. I think it's important that we have a discussion before we make a decision, because that is just right around the corner. And I don't want any of the children or the parents to be caught off guard with that coming up so soon.
That's why I was asking that we do this now. I just got this information today, just everything, totally confirmed today about that was the direction that they're asking us to go. So I just learned of it today at 3 o'clock. So I have not met with principals. I've not discussed any of this with my cabinet staff or anybody. We've not had any of these discussions. So that will start tomorrow on what expectations or what the needs there would be, and I can start to gather that information. So whenever you're ready to schedule a work session, we'll do it.
It would be a special meeting if you need action. It could be a work session. So how much time do you take me? 24?
24 hour notice. 24 hour. No, but I need some time to get my principals together and talk with them. I need a day or two.
Wednesday, Thursday?
Thursday would be the soonest I could have information together for everybody.
Would Thursday work? Same way?
Yep.
I'll be around.
Be around, just hang it out.
I'll be here.
I think Thursday works for me, but I would like for Paul to be able to discuss with how principals are going to approach students that are failing, how they're communicating with those people. If we do have a plan for some type of summer program for students to catch up, I think we really have got to be patient during this time. I think we have to really over-communicate as much as possible. Just exactly like Mr. Talby was talking a while ago, we've got to make sure that everybody knows exactly what the plan is and what the backup plan is.
Okay, I'll work on getting that together. Now, per the governor and the commissioner today, as far as summer classes go, probably prior to June 30th, any summer work is going to be like we're doing here right now. It's going to be the same kind of work that we're doing right now, because there was no expectation that these are going to be for gatherings of students to come back into school is going to happen before June 30th. So anything that we do prior to June 30th is going to be NTI type situations. But I will tell you this, I do know that principals and teachers are working with students that are struggling, and students that were anywhere close to failing. They're making special phone contact with those students. So there's a lot of extra already going in with those, but I get it, and I'll get together more that they're doing what their plans are and what they've been doing to this point in addition to that.
Yeah, and I can chime in because I can just say that the teachers have to keep a log, and they are keeping that fastidious, and they're communicating in all manner to reach the students. With those logs that kind of come in to me, we see when we have any trouble areas. A couple of schools in particular send some logs in, and any time that they have any areas with that, we go extra mile in terms of any types of communication to reach those students. And I'll also say that there is discussion among the principals on potentially having to change the weight of the grading system, because we do want this to be fair, and we don't want this to be something that is penalizing to the students, to the parents, to the families. They didn't ask for this, and they're going through this just like everybody is. And so everybody is being very conscientious with that. So there's a lot of thought going into it, and just know that that will be treated with the utmost fairness and consideration with what everybody's had to go through.
Yeah, I understand that, Mr. Holland. I just want to make sure that, if we decide we're ending school on May the 5th, that means that your teachers are no longer working. Therefore, there have to be teachers that'll have to be hired for this summer process. And, these are teachers that maybe not in the same field that these students need to pass classes. I just think we just need to make sure we have got a good plan that works for the benefit of the student during this time.
Yeah, one of the considerations we had talked about a couple of weeks ago is if they went this route of ending on May 1st, or if they went 1,062, which was going to put us the week after that May 1st time frame into the May 4th week. We had even discussed that gave us a couple of weeks there with teacher contracts and so forth to be able to be calculating the students' grades of those that have submitted that, and that gives that extra time to reach out to those students who have struggled just a little bit with this process to be able to have more of a one-on-one with them. So there's some consideration being given to that as well. Just kind of making you up to speed on that.
I want to add something in there, Mr. Peridot. Teachers, even though school might end for students, that's the student part might end, could end on May the 1st. Teachers are still have a contract of 187 days. They still got additional contract days. That doesn't end for them. They still have to fill that contract at this point in time. There's not been any change to the number of days on their contract for certified or for classified. So we would have them the most of the month of May.
So, Mr. Hall, this is Bill Salby.
Yes.
Quick question, and I got a strange email from a parent, and I don't know if any of this has been done. It's mainly, I guess, maybe at the high school, more relevant to high school. Is there any classes that you're aware of, and if Mr. Boland's on here, maybe he can chime in too. Is there any classes out there that's went from a regular grade scale like A, B, C, D to a pass-fail? And the reason I guess this parent was asking me is because, their kids would be eligible for SEEK money. And if it's a pass-fail, I guess they wouldn't.
Right. And so that's the answer to your question is no, we have not made any consideration for the pass-fail based on that. It's the KEYS funding is what that they would lose out on. So
Okay.
Who's going to be impacted the most with that is going to be the 8th grade at RDC through the 12th grade at GRC. Your basically 3rd grade to 7th grade, in theory, and I'm just going to say it in theory, could go to a pass-fail model easier, I'll phrase it that way, than you would with the 8th, 12th grade, simply because that's not going to impact their KEYS funding. But no, strong consideration has been given on making sure that, especially at that 8th through 12th grade, that the letter grades are given, because we do not want to have any of this impact kids, whether they're seniors or they're 8th grade and they're playing with things down the road, and this impacts them later on. So for those people, if you have conversations with them and they fall in those grades, that is the letter grade is where we're going to go because of the KEYS funding.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Thursday at 6:30, and I'm assuming Justin Mike got to hear this too.
Yeah.
Get that set up. And okay, with that being said, I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thank you. District one.
Yeah.
District two.
Yay.
District three.
Yes.
4.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 5-0. And this meeting is adjourned at 8:05.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Sorry
Thank
for
you.
interruption.
Thanks. See y'all Thursday.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.